Wait a minute. You're not watching the Super Bowl? Okay, actually, neither am I. I'm streaming a show and rolling paper beads. Care to join me? In my last video, I demonstrated how you can make your very own rolled paper beads. But the saying is, go big or go home. And that's what we're doing in this video. To make bigger salvage paper beads, you'll need a few simple items. As seen in my previous video on this topic, I used twist-up glue sticks, toothpicks, pencils, scissors, and rulers. And of course, salvage paper. Any old cheap glue sticks will do, as long as they're the twist-up kind that have the soft paste-like glue inside. Of course, you could always try using other types of glue for this technique, but I always recommend glue sticks because they work the best for me. The pasty glue inside is not too damp, it doesn't make the paper soggy, and it dries relatively quickly. Grab your pencil and your ruler, and if you have one, a yardstick style ruler. Next, prepare your paper. To make bigger, fatter paper beads, we're going to need longer strips of paper. And to get those longer strips, we're going to connect several pieces of paper end to end. Apply an ample amount of glue stick to the top margin of your page and then attach another sheet to that page. You can connect 2 pieces, 3 pieces, however many pieces you like, but I generally don't go longer than 36 inches, which is the length of my yardstick because it would be kind of tricky to measure past that.
Tricky, but not impossible.
Now we simply fold our sheets of paper over twice, with the nicest side on the inside. I'm demonstrating on a single piece of paper first, and then we'll move on to the longer strips of paper. As I mentioned in the previous video, this technique works on many different types of paper. You can use magazine pages, catalog pages, book pages. I've even used calendar pages, and they work beautifully. Just follow the same exact steps. Here's an example of 3 sheets connected. I'm folding it once, creasing it well, and now I'm going to fold it over a second time. And that's all there is to it. If you haven't yet watched my previous tutorial on rolling paper beads, my basic technique, you can find the link to that video in the description below and also pasted somewhere into this video. But I created this video in particular to demonstrate how to make bigger, chunkier beads than you can get from the basic technique. Now we need to draw some lines. I hope you liked drafting.
Not in football.
Because I did not like drafting class, and I'm still able to do this fairly easily. We're simply making some marks, whatever width you want your beads to be, and then at the top we're going to mark the midpoint so that we can create long triangle shaped strips. Here's where you marked at the bottom, and now we're going to mark at the top like so. The midpoint, and so on. And now you're looking like Hercule Poirot because you're connecting the dots. Go ahead and use your ruler to draw some lines. When you're doing this on the longer pieces, you're obviously going to use your yardstick to make the lines. I'm going to go ahead and fess up and say that this is not my favorite part of this process. I do not like measuring and drawing the lines because it's laborious to flip rulers all over the place, and yeah, I don't love that part. But the next part I like better, and that is cutting the strips of paper. But because I don't like measuring these strips out, I'm going to make myself suffer some more. No, I'm just kidding. I tend to just try to push through to make a nice big batch of these so I don't have to measure again soon. Again, since some of these are 3 pages connected or 2 pages connected, I'm simply doing the same technique but on a larger scale and just making longer strips. I start drawing my lines on the open end of the folded strip. When you get to the folded side of your strip, consider flipping the whole thing around to make it easier to draw the final line. Again, we're marking, and there's the midpoint. And we're drawing lines again. So we're almost 4 minutes into this video. Be sure to stick around because the good part is coming, where I show you how to make bigger and fatter rolled paper beads. This step is pretty zen for me. I turn on the streaming show, start cutting, and before I know it, voila. Did I mention toothpicks in the beginning? If you saw my previous video on this topic, you know we need toothpicks. I just want to let you get a close-up of these strips made from the connected pieces of paper. You can see the connected areas, and they're usually pretty secure, but if they do happen to come apart during the rolling process, you can just glue them back together. To roll your beads, the most efficient way that I found is to slide your strips of paper across the top of your glue stick. Don't forget to leave a finger margin at the tops of your strips with no glue so that they don't stick to your toothpicks. Take your time rolling and you'll be surprised that you can actually control the shape and the direction that the bead goes as you roll. It may be necessary to add a little additional glue to the very tip of your strip to make sure it stays put, and then spin your bead on the top of your glue stick to seal it. If you've incorporated an assortment of widths when you were measuring your bead strips, you will have a nice assortment of bead sizes and shapes when you roll them. You can edit as you roll. If you're liking the look of your bead and you want to stop it where it is, you can rip the remaining piece of paper off and use that strip to create a whole separate bead. The paper and the beads are flexible, and you should be too. It's a good thing you're still here because I'm about to show you more tips and tricks. You can shape the bead by how you roll the paper on, but you can also shape the bead once you've finished rolling by squeezing the shape. Squeeze your beads into triangles, ovals, squares, whatever you like. Just get creative. Also, sometimes as I'm rolling the beads, if a word or letter sticks out at me or a color on the colored pages, I'll stop the bead at that point, rip off the excess, and let that be the feature on the bead. Because of page margins, if I get to the end of the bead and there's a blank spot, I'll often rip that off so there won't be just white space on the bead. This is a cool phenomenon that creates unique and interesting beads. When you're cutting your beads out, often when you get to the folded end and you don't cut all the way through all the layers that are folded, you will often get these two-legged strips. And you could rip them apart, but rather than rip them apart, separate them into two beads, I'll often just roll them together as one. I start by rolling the top portion and then roll each side independently. I usually have to go back and add some more glue to the second strip before I can roll that one. The two-legged strips create some pretty cool shapes, like the hourglass and the teardrop, so if you see them in your batch, give them a chance. If you're enjoying this tutorial, if you're getting anything out of it, I invite you to hit the like button and to subscribe because there's only more creative fun to come. Here's one more example of a two-legged bead to demonstrate how they can vary in shape and size depending on several factors mentioned earlier. Remember that the more pieces of paper you connect end to end, the longer the strips, and in turn, the fatter the beads. If you've been paying attention, you notice I pushed the two ends of this two-part bead together to create a single fat bead, but they can always be moved back apart and shaped however you like. The two-legged strips can create some pretty fun and interesting bead shapes, so if you see them in your batch, give them a chance. Now I'm going to use this nice wide strip to share another tip. When you're rolling strips made up of several pieces of paper that have been connected, you'll sometimes spot the connections opening up a little bit. You can just add extra glue and keep rolling. It's not a big deal. Mine don't often separate when I'm rolling. I don't typically have a problem with it, but if you're applying enough glue when you're connecting the pages, it shouldn't be an issue for you. Another technique I use to make larger, fatter beads is to simply glue two strips together prior to rolling the beads. Glue the two strips together, apply glue to the bottom strip, and then roll as usual. Keep your glue stick nearby in case you need to apply additional glue to keep your strips together as you roll. I really love how easy it is to make these beads and to make so many different variations of these beads. These can be used for so many different types of projects, from jewelry to ornaments to scrap craft and home decor. The possibilities are endless. Finally, to seal your beautiful beads, I recommend popping them onto skewers and applying a sealant of your choice. Head on down to the description for information on products to seal your beads, and be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. And on that note, I'm going to go check out the halftime show.